Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our 9-month Ultimate World Cruise adventure. Well, today we continue our trip up the west coast of Africa with a stop in Dakar, Senegal, where we get to visit Goree Island and learn about its amazing and important history, as well as tour this wonderful West African city.
Welcome to Living Phase 2.
Hi, I'm Mike,
And I'm Nancy, and we're empty nesters striving to live life to the
and we're
fullest.
living that full life aboard Royal Caribbean's 9-month Ultimate World Cruise on Serenade of the
Well,
Seas.
we are, friends. Today we're up to days 181 through 183, visiting Dakar, Senegal. Now, Dakar is the capital of Senegal, and
Mm-hmm.
it seems to be one of the more stable places.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't had revolutions or civil wars here, and so it really shows that it seems to be more of a modern city. And you're going
Mm-hmm.
to see that it's been one of our favorite stops along West Africa as we've continued to move up the northern side of Africa.
Right. So to tour Dakar, as soon as we knew we were going around Africa, and as you've seen in our previous videos, we were rerouted from going through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal because of the conflict there. We started looking at what would we do as far as, in each of these cities. So in doing our research, we found a private guide it was actually through Viator that we found him. His name is Pape, and we booked him for the Dakar City Tour and Goree Island. Now, Goree Island is going to be the thing that almost everybody does when
Yeah.
they come here to Dakar. It's the number one tourist spot to go to. It's the number one thing to see here in Dakar. So almost every tour you book is going to go out to Goree Island, which ours, of course, was set up to do. And as soon as we booked it, the guide Pape started communicating on WhatsApp. We were going back and forth, and we did have some changes in our itinerary, some updates and timings and things like that. And he was always very responsive, and that's always good to see. And once
Yes.
again, it's very important. Pro tip here, WhatsApp. Get WhatsApp, because that's how most tour guides, most international communication is going to occur, because it is international. You don't need it's not like you're making phone calls or text messages or emails. It's all encrypted. It's all safe. It's a Meta product or Facebook product, and it's used around the world. So be sure to check out WhatsApp. But yeah, Pape was very, really good at communicating, and that always gives you a good sense of comfort, let's say,
It really
to make
does.
sure that things are going to work okay. Well, once we arrived there in Dakar, we were a little later than what was planned. The ship was just a little bit later, but Pappy was communicating right away in the morning. I think about 9:30 in the morning. Our ship arrived at 10:30 was the gangway down. He was
Uh-huh.
like, "Hey, I'm here. I'm waiting. Just let me know when you get off." Now, one thing that did change, we had originally booked this thinking it was going to be a private tour with 8 of us. And he did communicate a few days before and said, "Hey, I've got a couple more people that are going to be on the van." He goes, "Don't worry, it's a 20 passenger van. We got plenty of room."
He said the
And
van was new.
and he said the van was new, which it was relatively new. And so he added 7 more people, which it was still relatively comfortable with 15 of us in this van. Well, like I said, he was there right away. Promptly,
Uh-huh.
he was right there at the gangway. He had a sign. In fact, he sent us a picture of himself on WhatsApp, so we knew exactly what to look for, his shirt,
Yeah.
and he got us on the
Pappy was
van.
very
He
professional.
was very professional. In fact, he's been doing this for 23 years, guiding here in Senegal. And as you'll see as we go along, everyone in the city knows Pape. So we got in the van and started heading out. Now, the to get to Goree Island, it's a ferry, and the ferry, you have to be in the terminal to be on the next ferry, and they fill the terminal until the ferry can't hold anyone else, and then they stop letting people in the terminal, so they know if you're in the terminal, you're on the ferry. Well,
Correct.
Pape had already bought our tickets. We were all set, and he has been doing this long enough that he knew the timing
Mm-hmm.
and knew when we had to get to the terminal to make sure that we would get on the next ferry. And he
Right.
knew we had a little bit of time, so we went to a market before we went to the ferry.
Right. We went to the fish and produce market. It's actually the oldest market there in Dakar, although it had unfortunately burned down and they've rebuilt it. But it was very interesting to see and to walk through. He took us all through the produce area and then into the fish meat area. And it was very interesting to see, how they operate and how they sell their wares there, and it was just a unique experience.
Yeah,
But
some of the fish we saw actually looked really good. Some of the prawns were like
huge.
they were like 10 inches long, and
They're
some
like
of the
lobster
lobsters.
size.
Oh well, and some of the lobsters they had. What was it? They had 5 kilo lobsters, almost 10-pound lobsters. They were crazy big. Yeah.
And what did he say they sell for? What, $20-$25 a kilo?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
but anyway, very, very fascinating to see. Well, so then after the market, we arrived at the ferry terminal there. And since we'd already had tickets, we were able to get in. Now, we did end up waiting about an hour for the next ferry. I think the ferries come once an hour. The Royal Caribbean Tours had booked the first ferry out. And so, pro tip, if that's an advantage of taking a royal tour. They're going to get you off the ship first before other passengers, and you're going to get that little bit of a head start, which is helpful. But some of the other passengers that had gotten off the ship when we did, now we went to the market, they went straight to the ferry, and they ended up having to wait about 2 hours there for that next ferry for them to catch. So we only had to wait about an hour, which was doable.
Yeah, and our guide, again, having a good guide, he warned us. He said, this is Saturday. It's very busy on the ferry
Right,
going over
he
because
did.
a lot of families, and you're going to see this later once we get to Goree Island, a lot of families go there for just a Saturday afternoon, go to the beach. They just enjoy the island. And so, yeah, it was pretty busy. Even though there were a lot of people from the ship there was a lot of local people going over to enjoy the island for the day.
There were.
Yep. Well, we went to board the ferry, and it was pretty busy, pretty packed.
It was. I did get a seat. Unfortunately, you had to stand. And the ferry ride, though, is only about 25 minutes long, so it's not very long. We heard our first sounds of Dakar. Just
Oh my gosh.
It's this clacking rattle sound that they like kind of a maraca. They shake and
It's
it
two balls that
clacks
they
and-
clack together on a string, and you just hear it everywhere, and you can hear it here. So yeah, we'll never forget that sound. It's everywhere, and they're trying to sell you those clacky ball maraca things, and we didn't buy any. But
Our children would not be happy if we bought those for the
I
grandchildren.
almost did. I almost bought some for the grandkids, but no, we didn't. Well, we arrived at Goree Island after 25 minutes, got off, and our guide had lunch set up for us.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
Another advantage here. He had actually taken our lunch order ahead of time and had called it in ahead. So lunch was waiting for us when we got off of the ferry. We went straight there and sat down. We had another version of the red, which is like what we had yesterday, and kind of a broken
Ghana.
in Ghana, kind of a broken rice dish. He offered us fish, chicken, or vegetarian. I actually chose the vegetarian, and you chose the chicken.
Fish.
Oh, fish this time? Okay.
Yeah, fish.
And yeah, it was good. They had a Scotch bonnet hot relish that you could add to it, and that added a little bit of zip as well.
Yeah,
so.
it was probably one of the spicier sauces or condiments we've had on our trip.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah, I put that in, mixed it in, and that really helped as well. No, it was I was very pleased with the lunch, the service, but we went on, and because we had to finish that up, and then we had our appointment for our first stop here on Goree Island, and that is the Slave House. Now, the Slave House is one of the most important things to see. It's the number one thing to see here on Goree Island, as Goree Island was a former transit point for slavery here out of this area of Africa, primarily out of Senegal. And much like what we saw in Ghana, this was another transit point and another place where slaves were housed until the ships could arrive and then take them over to other areas all around the world, from Brazil all the way up to the United States. And I actually think I appreciated this tour a little bit more. Although in Ghana, we did have basically a private tour. We had a single dulcet or guide that took us around the slave castle. In this case, again, this is a huge benefit of having a guide like Pape. We had a private time within this, it is called the La Maison de Slavery, I think is, my French is terrible, but it's the House of Slaves. They had it closed with just our group of 15 people, and Pape himself gave us the tour. So it was very good to be able to not be in there with a bunch of other people. You could reflect, you could think about the history and what occurred here. But we walked through, he gave us the history. We saw different areas. Like one area, they had a reflecting pool, a large fountain that you could, it's very traditional to pour a little bit of a drink out on the floor to remember those in the past that, died. And so they had this pool that with a ladle you could do that. And they, of course, had the door of no return in the back, that's where the slaves would exit and go to there was formerly a pier there. But no, it was very moving, very educational.
Yeah,
I thought the
very
presentation was very good.
sad. Maybe it wasn't quite the punch like we had in Ghana with just the horrificness of it, but it was still very moving.
Yes, it was, and they had a really good presentation up in the governor's residence up on the top. I thought that it just really covered the history of slavery very well. Everything from pre-colonial times to all the way through, and it was a good presentation. And again, the number one thing to see, you certainly can't go to Goree Island without seeing what's called the slave house. Well, after we exited the slave house, we then just walked through some of the streets of Goree Island. Quite beautiful.
This is beautiful, right?
Yeah.
It really was. They've done a nice job. They're doing a lot of remodeling on the island here, so everything is getting a fresh coat of paint, a lot of touch-ups. The landscaping is beautiful, and the flowers were all in bloom. And so Goree Island, despite all the slave trade and the horrificness that had happened there, they're really refurbishing it into kind of a beautiful place and more of a destination. And as we continued to walk through, it was nice to see, we saw children playing at the beach. So we moved from all the heaviness to a joyous, lighthearted scene, and that was really precious to see all the kids playing around there.
Yeah, well, as a reminder, it is a Saturday, like we said, so families come over, they go for a swim, they just enjoy the island. It's a destination for people from Dakar to come over here and just enjoy the day. And I agree with you. That was such a dichotomy between what we just seen and the kids. It just warmed my heart. We just sat and watched them for a while, the kids playing. Well, as we were walking by those families playing in the ocean, what we were doing is walking to what's called the Statue of Freedom, and it's a statue celebrating the freedom from slavery around the world and in Africa and West Africa. And actually, right behind that Statue of Freedom is the Museum of Slavery. In this case, our tour, we didn't have time to actually go and tour that because we had other things we were going to see on the mainland. But that some of our friends did see it, and they said it was really good.
Interesting.
One thing we forgot to mention is, much like in Ghana, Barack and Michelle Obama, when they did their West Africa tour as president and first lady, they actually did stop here as well. They saw the House of Slavery. So like we said, if you come to Dakar or come to Senegal, this is the number one destination that you go to. Well, after we left the Statue of Freedom, we walked the back alleys and streets of Goree Island a little bit more, looked at the views and the different houses that they're remodeling, and really doing a very good job to transform the island. But we had to get back to the ferry and get back to the mainland because we had some more touring to do there. You just want to be careful because, much like coming over, once you get through the ticket booth there and you kind of get in there, you're going to get on the ferry. But just a little heads up, there's quite a bit of pushing and shoving, and as you're trying to queue up there, people are kind of elbowing and trying to get up to the front.
Seats of the ferry.
Exactly.
They don't want to have to stand.
Right, and so if you're going to be up to, if you want a seat, you're going to try to get up to the front a little bit. We have one friend that walks a little bit with a cane, and of course I wanted Nancy to have a seat. You guys did have seats on the way back, and once again, myself and a couple of the guys stood up front on the bow and let you have the seats. But just be aware, kind of want to watch your valuables and just kind of make sure that you're aware as you're in these very, very tight quarters and people are kind of pushing and shoving a little bit to get on the ferry. But it was a nice ferry ride back. In fact, we had a really good view of our ship. It's right there in the harbor, and that was a nice view to have. And we arrived back and got back on our bus and we headed out.
Yep, we did. So we had just a very short little city tour here. He took us by the president's house. We didn't stop there, and took us also by the cathedral. They were having mass at the time, so once again we did not stop and get out. But we did stop at a really interesting place. It was the Freedom Renaissance Monument, and this is beautiful here. So this is a monument. It stands 52 meters high on a 100-meter high hill of a family. Now the woman, she is pointing back to Goree Island, and they're kind of like rising out of the rock. They're breaking away from the chains of their past, and she's pointing to the past, and then the baby is pointing to the Americas. He's pointing to the future. And so I thought this has been one of the most beautiful statues that I've
Very
ever
moving.
seen. It really was.
Yeah.
It was, at the base, since it was a Saturday, they actually have at the base a market set up that they do on Saturdays there, and that was rather interesting to walk through. We didn't get anything there, but we did walk through it.
Yeah, it's kind of a local market. They had clothing, spices, fruit, even some fruits and vegetables. So it really wasn't a tourist market as much as it was, although there were a few tourist things there.
Yeah.
But it really was where the locals would come on Saturday, kind of almost a farmer's market.
It really was.
Yeah.
So then after the monument, we had one more stop to make, and that was at the Mosque of the Divinity. This was a photo stop. We didn't get to go inside the mosque, but it's very picturesque on the outside. And the base of it is all the fishermen's markets are down there, and that was really why they had built the mosque there, was I guess for the fishermen. So it was very picturesque and beautiful. And now it is time to go back to the ship. And we had a couple of sea days. One of the interesting things on the sea days is they had a passenger talent show. So that was neat. Some of our friends got to participate in it. They have a World Cruise choir, so they sang a song.
They were excellent.
Yeah, they were. Some of the passengers played guitars that they had brought on board the ship. Some sang. One gentleman had a 2 or 3 minute presentation just showing slides of the World Cruise. So it's nice to look back on that and see.
Then also on those sea days, one of the voices of Royal. Now there are certain singers and talent like the orchestra that are with us the entire world cruise, and so we've actually got to know them a little bit. Just wonderful people. Well, they're doing something extremely unique, especially for Royal Caribbean. Each of those singers are doing a solo show where they get to highlight their talent. And tonight was Patricia's turn. She was doing hers. Oh my gosh, it was so good. She has such a powerful voice and just a great singer. And I actually really enjoyed her show.
And they kind of get to tell their story as well as how they got involved in singing. And just that's just very interesting and fun. But,
yeah, it is. Well, and then it was even more interesting afterwards because, there's certain relationships on the ship. And
her boyfriend sings.
And he is the piano player and singer in the Schooner Bar here. And we went to see him afterwards, after Patricia's show. Well, she showed up and they did this unbelievable duet as sitting at the piano. Now, unfortunately, we can't play the audio for you because YouTube won't let us do that because of copyrights. But I wish you could. I mean, it was amazing to listen to the two of them sing. So, and it was very heartwarming.
Great entertainment.
Too. Yeah. Well, later then on these sea days, also we enjoyed the Taste of Royal lunch.
That was good.
Once again, we've done that one other time way back. I think it was in January on the World Cruise. We decided to do it again with our friends. That's always really good. What they do here is pick a dish from different specialty restaurants throughout the Royal Caribbean fleet. And it was good as always. They have a wine pairing, and we enjoyed that in the afternoon.
Well, Mike, let's get this wrapped up here. Would you come back to Senegal?
Much like some of the other stops in West Africa, although Dakar has been my favorite stop as we've come up the coast here, probably not. I feel like we had a great overview of Dakar, of Senegal. I mean, of course, there's more to see in the country of Senegal, but no, I think I've seen what I want to see. I've seen Goree Island. I've seen Senegal, and I enjoyed it. And I think, like we said before, for some of the other countries, not necessarily Angola, but if your cruise ship is stopping here, you're going to have a great time. Goree Island is good. They know how to handle tourists here. You're gonna really experience a different side of West Africa in Senegal. So while we're glad we come here, no, I think I've kind of been there, done that.
I agree with those statements, but now. Next stop, Tenerife, the Canary Islands, where we're getting out of Africa.
Yeah.
So what are we doing there, Mike?
Oh, we are going to visit the tops of the volcanoes and have some of the most spectacular views. truly we've had on this Ultimate World Cruise, and we're going to go all the way in the caves under, in the lava tubes under those volcanoes. We had an amazing time in Tenerife. You're going to want to see this one.
You get to drive a car
I
again.
finally get to drive again after
after
6
6
months.
months.
That's right. So you're going to have to see, do I remember how to drive?
All right, friends, thanks so much for watching. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for being with us on this journey. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.